One-on-one with Santa.
Yeah.
Welcome to Roleplaying as Smart People, the podcast where we pretend to know what we're talking about when it comes to all things tabletop. And this is a little series I like to call One-on-One with Santa. Yeah. And joining me today, we got we got Eric. We've been chatting a little bit way too much even before this podcast started. But yeah, you can see him if you're on screen. Hello, Eric.
Hello.
Hey.
Oh, that's right. There's a whole bunch of people watching me. Hello, everyone at home.
Yeah. Hopefully. At least listening.
Hopefully.
I know listening. You'll definitely have a lot of listening. Um, so
A lot of listening.
so on today's episode, we are going to be talking about a game, of course. But this one is created by Eric. Would you like to talk a little bit about it before we get into the nitty gritty?
Sure. Yeah. So we're talking about my upcoming horror RPG, The Last Hand. Um, The Last Hand is a GMless, no prep horror game for a single session of play. It kind of takes inspiration from play to lose horror RPGs like Dread or 10 Candles, or a recent favorite of mine, The Zone, was really popular recently on Kickstarter.
Oh yeah.
But it's not play to lose. I've been kind of using play to survive, because you can survive, but um, due to the mechanics of the game, which we'll get into later, you're kind of you play off of each other in a way that is kind of a part of the horror genre that I wanted to emphasize. It facilitates a combination of like warranted distrust, where you're holding on to secrets, but obligatory cooperation, because if you don't work together, you will just all die. So it really utilizes a lot of the aspects of horror that I like, and the ways that my personal home group plays horror games, while also being completely GMless and no prep, so you don't need a GM to plan a horror story ahead of time or prep a monster or mystery or anything. The game helps you facilitate all of that as you play, which is what I need, because I don't have enough time as an adult to prep games anymore.
No, I definitely feel you on that one. As someone who has my own little table, they're like, some of them are like, we want really long campaigns, and I'm just like, yeah, sure, we could play 3 sessions and not be able to play for 3 months and forget what we're doing. Sure.
I have a weekly Wednesday night RPG
Ooh.
that we've been meeting almost every Wednesday. We skip on occasion because of emergencies and stuff, but we've been playing consistently for like 6 or 7 years now.
Oh shit.
And yeah, and so we'll have one person run an extended campaign, so we get to do full-blown campaigns. Uh, and then after like 20 sessions or so, we stop, do a bunch of one shots, figure out what we're going to do next. So we burn through a lot of systems, we try a lot of stuff. um I am a game designer, so we play a lot of my stuff sometimes.
Kind of makes sense on that one. So a little bit about your game. Like, I got a chance to look through, and I saw horror, and I was very excited because I freaking love horror so much. And also, then I saw the one thing I was curious about was the GMless aspect, because a lot of I've seen it creep up a little bit more and more, but me personally, my experience is very little with uh, GMless systems. So, how does the GMless system work within your game?
Yeah, no, so we have played, my group has played quite a few GMless games, a handful,
Hmm.
and we bounce off of them. I've bounced off of a lot of GMless games and had mediocre to bad times with them. But sometimes, once you get the ball rolling, it's a lot of fun. You just need to get that ball rolling. What I wanted to do to make a GMless game that doesn't have as hard of a barrier.
Hmm.
This is sort of GMless in the sense that there is no one dedicated narrator who preps everything. Each scene, there is the dealer, which
Yeah.
is the keyword for our GM, and the dealer introduces the trouble to the scene. The trouble is the initial instigating bad thing
Yeah.
that starts the scene, and then they add that trouble. The next couple of players add blinds. Oh yeah, it emulates Texas Hold'em because I'm cute and made a cute game. It plays really well about that. But the next two players add blinds, which modify the trouble, add new varying factors to the scene, and then you start the GMless aspect. But the
Oh,
dealer is always kind of the one running the scene, making final decisions about the scene. So GMing is kind of passed around the table. Each scene, the dealer hands
oh,
off the dealer chip to the next player. Um, so it's GMless in the sense that there is no one dedicated GM, and you all share narrative responsibility because it is zero prep. You're all required to try to make it a cool, compelling story that you're all excited about.
yeah.
But there is some sense of each scene has somebody that can go, no, we're done with this scene, let's move on. Because I found that in at my table, we're very experienced at playing games, and we've played a lot of GMless games, and having one person who feels comfortable just saying, okay, this is getting silly, or this is kind of just spin wheeling and there's nothing happening anymore, let's just move on.
Yeah.
um, that helps move the story along. It makes players who aren't familiar with GMless games a little bit more comfortable with a GMless game
Hmm.
because it's a more similar to the GM'd traditional tabletop RPG experience where one person just gets
Yeah.
to make those calls.
It's almost like a GM shared kind of system, right?
Right, right. You share GMing responsibilities, and there is always one person who kind of has that authority,
Yeah.
just to make sure that somebody can say, okay, let's call it, or oh, this is kind of there's nothing happening. Let's add an element into the scene to make sure something keeps happening. But
Hmm.
it is shared around the table. It's a great way to introduce new players who aren't necessarily GMs or don't have a lot of experience in GMing
Yeah.
to that role without giving them a whole campaign they have to write and run and organize. It's a great introduction to you have a little bit of power and responsibility, but it's
Yeah.
not a lot, and other people also share responsibility.
Yeah,
So it's
you only gotta do that little bit right here. You don't have to do the whole thing, just a little bit.
exactly, exactly.
That's
Takes a
that.
lot of the weight off your shoulders.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Now, you kind of spoke of the mechanics, and this is where I thought the game was really unique. For one, you use cards, and I freaking love cards. I don't care if people say it's a gimmick or if it's a, as you, what did you call it? Cute? Cute?
It's cute. It is. It started out as not a gimmick, and then it became a gimmick. And now that I've finished writing it, and I'm very proud of this game. I think it is a really good game. It'll be
Yeah.
a little bit genuine here. It is good. I'm very proud of it. I put a lot of work into it, and I have a lot of friends who have put a lot of work into it. And it is a project that I care about deeply.
Hmm.
The card mechanic very much goes out of its way to emulate the game of Texas Hold'em, the poker game of Texas Hold'em.
Yeah.
Um, and that is why the default setting is Wild West, because I didn't even have a default setting at first, and then I went, I should make a default setting. We're playing poker. All right,
It
let's do
makes
the Wild
sense.
West. Yeah. But yeah, so the game is a bit gimmicky, but not gimmicky in a way that gets in the way. It facilitates the story really well.
I don't honestly like everyone like I think gimmick has like a bad turn to it, but I don't think
Yeah,
so because like at some point dice were the gimmick of like war games that turn into tabletop.
right.
There's like gimmicks are just like little fun things that give the game personality. And I when was looking and reading through your game, I wasn't thinking, "Oh, this seems like a gimmick system just trying to play off that." You had you had a theme built down, which also played to the cards, and it all felt really kind of organic in it. So
Well, thank you.
oh, no problem, no problem. I love creativity. So your game was just like I can see where this blah, 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 creativity is coming from. So you were mentioning before where it does how it kind of emulates. Uh, was it Texas Hold'em? Right? Yeah.
Texas Hold'em.
I was for some reason my brain was just like card game. I was about to say blackjack. I'm like, no, it's not blackjack. I know it's not blackjack. Um, but you were mentioning how there was it there was blinds and you're playing as a dealer. How does that really react with the game?
Yeah. So the way the structure of the game here, let me pull up my copy
Yep.
and read out of the book. The structure of the game, this is the easiest way to do it, is you start with the dealer. The
Mhm.
dealer is our GM. Great, fantastic. The dealer has a dealer chip. You pass the dealer chip between players as the dealer changes hands. Um, each scene follows a structure of a hand of poker, sort of. So you introduce trouble, which is sort of like the initial ante or the initial bet.
Yeah.
Um, and then the way that then the next player to the dealer adds a blind. In poker, a blind is that initial bet. So the dealer will deal, and then the two next players have to do the large blind and the small blind to make sure there is an initial pot for the hand. So
Oh,
I used that. And so what happens is the dealer adds the trouble. We have a table of example troubles to start the game off. Um, but so an example from the table is the hoofbeats are thundering towards the safe house, right? So the scene is set. There are hoofbeats. They're
mhm.
thundering towards the safe house. And then the player next to them would add a blind. A blind would just be something that adds another detail, modifies the trouble, changes the scene in a way, just twists it and adds a little more je ne sais quoi to the scene. Um, a blind for hoofbeats are thundering towards the safe house, looking at my table here, is the source cannot be seen through the dust.
Ooh.
This trouble actually is taken directly from a playtest of mine,
Oh,
where the initial trouble was hoofbeats, and then we went, "Well, there's a dust storm outside," and then the next person said the hoofbeats are deafening, and so you modify that initial trouble to now be a little bit different, a little bit weirder, and now
yeah.
three people have their hands in the narrative.
Mhm.
Three people have touched this scene already and we haven't even started playing. So, once you've got the blinds, you deal out a hand. The game is played with poker cards, just a traditional deck of cards. Plus jokers are included because we don't have to follow casino rules, and jokers are a cool mechanic to use. You deal hands out, everybody gets dealt two cards every turn. Your cards stay in your hand between turns, so you
Yeah.
can save cards. That comes up in the maybe I don't help my friends right now because I need to not lose later. But you do get dealt two cards every round, and then the dealer does the flop in both Texas Hold'em and the last hand, the flop,
Mhm.
the dealer reveals three cards from the deck. Those three cards are sort of a the cards have meaning. The behind the by the suit and the number or value, uh, and they kind of mechanically represent the narrative in a way.
Oh, okay.
So usually the higher the value of the card, the more difficult it is to overcome the trouble. The way you engage with those cards is by playing cards from your hand, which
Yeah.
kind of breaks down the poker analogy. But uh, once you've played the flop out in front of you, then let me get back to my spot on the page. Then people play cards, and when you play cards on the flop in front of you, you are narrating your players. That's when the scene actually starts. You're narrating the characters that you've made
Yeah.
overcoming or interacting with the trouble. Just because you don't have to play a card to do things, but if you are resolving trouble that has occurred, so in this case, if you're dealing with the problem that there are hoofbeats thundering towards the safe house, you have to play cards over the cards in the flop. So the flop hits the community cards, the pool in front of everybody,
Yeah.
and you have to play cards that are a higher value than those in order to beat them. So if you don't, if the lineup of the community cards has a 10 and nobody has any face cards in their hands, you can combine two cards of the same suit to overcome it that way, but
Yeah.
that takes two cards. You can talk to one another and try to share cards, but you can't talk about the value of your card. You can talk about the suit. You can say, I've got a club here, or the suits actually mean something. So the clubs represent violent force or vigor.
Yeah.
It's physical force with or without tools. You're hitting something. Spades represent ingenuity, utility, problem solving. You're tinkering with something. You're maneuvering around it. It's like your dexterity
Yeah.
check, I guess. Hearts represents kindness, humanity, empathy, talking to people, working with animals, and diamonds represent stuff, money, assets, tools, having things. So you can say, I have stuff, but I can't. If you, Santa,
Yeah.
have a diamonds also, you can say, oh, I got stuff too. We got to deal with this 10 on the table. Let's. I have a little bit of stuff, and you have a big amount of stuff. We put them down. We don't know if we're actually going to overcome that 10.
Ah.
So you 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 can kind of work together. You need to work together
Yeah.
because any of those cards that aren't actually resolved will carry over into subsequent scenes and will eventually build up and build up and build up and become overwhelming.
That sounds really cool. You like can you like straight up like trade cards or is it just you can
No,
like
you can't just trade
okay.
cards because, and I think we can talk about the end of the game later. But you do want to hold on to your cards because
Okay.
you want to make sure you have a good hand at the end. During
Mm,
the last hand, ha
yeah.
ha, the name of the
That's
game. You
very
want to make
clever.
sure
I
you
like that.
have.
That's clever.
Guy, yeah, I'm a real good writer. Um, it's a real shame that the first game that I'm kickstarting in February of 2023 uh, is just very gritty, dark, broody, and plays it straight, and not even wacky a little bit. It is genuinely a shame.
Are you
I
are you a wacky player? Are you the like Gonzo type character? Like
my friends, my table often says that my campaigns, when I run an RPG, it is very campy. It is very much a like, let's go on a pulpy, campy adventures. Like, I I love like pulpy, campy, wild, superhero-y, just
yeah.
fun stuff. Uh, but I wrote the last hand, and it's very good, and
Yeah.
I'm very proud of it. And it's tragically gritty and very broody.
Well, I I think it takes because I'm we mentioned this earlier when it was just me and you with before the cameras and all that. How we have some similarities, and I think we have a bit of similarities with this thing because I will say I like the campy, the dumb, the funny, the jokey kind of stuff. I love that kind of stuff to death. But as a GM, I've only ran the dark and gritty. Like
It's really appealing.
it's so and it's so fun because although like I think part of it is, and I don't know if you'll agree with this or not, but I think it's because this way you can it's more fun to watch everyone squirm.
I see. I don't even have that. I just like I. something about like I really like horror movies. I really
Oh
like
yeah.
the horror genre. I really enjoy it a lot. I like the tension that it builds,
Hmm.
and I like the uncertainty. One of the things in The Last Hand is like there is a monster stalking you perpetually,
Yeah.
and you don't know about it. You don't know anything about it. And I really like that. I really like not knowing. And so I like facilitating games where my players don't know what's coming up and can
Oh
start
yeah.
speculating. I love when players start speculating because then me as a GM, I can think, yeah, that's a better idea than what I wrote down. I'm taking that. Yeah, absolutely.
That's key. I think everyone should always try and find people. I actively encourage speculation too. Um, one
Oh
one
yeah.
one little question I had, because you mentioned that you like the suspense and all that. So what kind of movies, like horror movies and all that, did you actually use to inspire you for writing the system?
All right, Santa.
All right.
I'm gonna start with some movies that I have watched since writing this game and think this game does a really good job of creating that kind of story. Uh, Apostle is a really good folk horror movie. Uh, it it's like The Ritual, really good horror movie.
Yeah,
It from Stephen King,
of
very good
course.
horror movie. Monster movies is really what this game facilitates. Things where you're introduced to there is some sort of creature, something that you know
Yeah.
exists, and then over the course of the film, you find out more and more about it.
Mhm.
I watched the film Bird Box and wrote this game immediately afterwards. And I'm not proud of that fact. Bird Box is a fine movie.
It's a good movie. I don't think you could say
Yeah,
it's a great movie, but it's a
it's
fun
yeah,
horror
it's
movie.
not exceptional, but
No.
it is enjoyable. I enjoyed it. It was in the middle. It was a period of quarantining where I was just missing LARPing because I play in a monthly. I help run and write for a monthly horror LARP called Dystopia Rising. You should look up your local Dystopia Rising chapter and look to go there. It's a great time. You should try LARP. But I missed LARPing a lot in quarantine, and I
Oh,
watched Bird
no.
Box, and I just went, man, I miss cowering in the woods while something is trying to kill me. And I really liked how Bird Box had a monster that
Yeah.
you couldn't see, you didn't know anything about it, and anybody who saw it killed themselves or joined it. I thought
Oh,
that that
yeah.
was a really compelling couple of traits, and I like within a week and a half wrote the first draft of The Last Hand after
Oh.
watching that movie. And it's come a ways from there, but that's still where it is there is it is out there is the phrase I use a lot, and the name of the setting expansion, the add-on that's going to be in the a Kickstarter is a bunch of additional settings outside of the Wild West. But it is out there is the thing we say because it is a monster and we don't know what it is, but it's there and it does nasty stuff.
So, out of curiosity, just because this is probably one of my favorite horror movies of all time, have you seen Terrorizer?
Terrorizer. I haven't. I'm gonna Google it real quick.
The second one came out actually, I think in October. I haven't seen it yet. It looks weird, but trust me when I say it is fantastic. I think you'll like it. It looks like a B movie, but trust me, it is way.
Terrorizers.
Oh, that's not
Is
the
it
right.
terrorizers?
No.
That's not in English.
Oh wait,
Terrifier?
Terrifier. That's it. Why am I'm okay. A little bit
Oh
of a
god. Oh no.
with the
It's a
clown.
clown.
Yeah, a little bit of backstory
Oh
right
no.
now. I have just gone from working overnights to days, so my mental capacity is shot.
Oh no.
I'm just letting
I'm
you
so
know.
sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I'm getting used to it. It's the evening time now, so I'm actually somewhat awake. Yeah, no,
This is great. I want to watch this. I want
yeah,
to watch Terrifier because I I found out through LARP at Dystopia Rising, which you should go look up your local chapter. I found out that I have a clown phobia and had a panic
Oh.
attack when a clown NPC tried to kill me at 3 in the morning. So I found out that I have a clown phobia, but I want to. I like watching clown horror movies because it kind of like it gets the juices flowing way more than a regular
Yeah.
horror movie. You know when you have those real anxiety attacks.
Yeah, trust me when I say, this one will definitely, it's a little twisted.
It does look like a B movie.
It looks like a B movie, but trust me, it is sometimes really chilling and really disturbing.
All right,
Um,
where can I stream
I
this?
think it's on Prime.
Prime. All right, adding it to my list.
See, this is what you gotta do. I'm not gonna lie, when you talk about yours, I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna have to make a note, and I'm gonna have to write that down when I'm editing this because I think I've
Oh yeah.
seen The Omen." You mentioned that one, right?
Uh,
Or
I didn't mention that, but it's
oh
kind of
my god, where's my mind?
Apostle is really good. I've
Apostle.
got a list somewhere of maybe I can find it. I have a list of movies that it kind of
Oh,
can
that's
play.
why I
But
thought Omen.
any of those horror movies where there is a greater force that you don't know what it is. A lot of it's a very common in like folk horror
Mhm.
also. Um but yeah, the I think I've seen The Omen. And
The Omen was
honestly,
okay.
this is one of the things I'm interested about cuz I've played this game uh, a bit, quite a bit, a
Yeah.
few times.
You
Let's
gotta
say
test
we've
it out a
play
few
tested
times,
it.
agreed.
We've play tested it. But we've only play tested it going there is a monster of some kind.
Mhm.
And one of my contributors in the setting expansion is doing something. Their setting is going to be uh like a dungeon, like a
Yep.
traditional fantasy dungeon, where something is invading your dungeon, right?
Ooh.
Maybe you're a kobold or a goblin or people, and something is invading your dungeon. And I like that vibe. I'm interested to see other ways you could do this. Maybe the thing that we're worried about
Mhm.
is some like a neighbor. Maybe your new neighbors that just moved in next door are it,
Oh,
and you're just
that would be
learning about
interesting.
it.
That would be
I
interesting.
feel like there's a lot. The game facilitates the ability to tell unique, novel, well-crafted horror stories very well, and I feel like outside of generic horror stories where
Yeah.
there's a monster, run away from it, there is there is a lot there that you can explore with this system.
So almost do like, to mention just a video game, but almost to kinda do like a Hello Neighbor type style thing.
Right, Hello Neighbor, or yeah, just some sort of like very clandestine kind of like grounded thing. You could probably do a like not specifically, but like yeah, you could do a movie where it's just folks, right? There's
Mhm.
just folks, some people,
Yeah.
like the new folks in town, or maybe
Or maybe you're the
the
new
you
folks in
moved,
town.
or you're the new folks in town. Maybe
Yeah.
you just moved into a new town and this town's a bit off.
Yeah.
Maybe like Midsummer, you just went on vacation to Sweden and these folks are weird.
Yeah.
There's a lot there, right? The arc that the last hand tells, and we could get into that a bit more right now about how we define it.
Yeah.
But the arc that it tells is very applicable to horror movies because the idea of you introduce the thing that is unsettling about the monster or the cult or the people or the neighbors or your significant other's family. Uh,
That could
you
be an
introduce that
interesting.
factor, and then you, over the course of the film, are introduced to more and more. Oh no, this is way worse, and that's the bulk of where the horror is generated from in the last hand.
Oh, that sounds really cool. So, there's not too many card RPGs out there. Uh, did you have trouble trying to find inspiration from other games, like towards the mechanics? Because the mechanics themselves, there's not too many that do what you do. So you almost had to come up with new ones. How did
Yeah,
you
the
go ahead?
the card aspect is I don't think I found anything that I was trying to emulate,
Hmm.
um, or was really drew inspiration from. W- When what I was trying to do was to do something similar to what Dread, if you're familiar with Dread,
Hmm.
the Jenga tower,
Yeah.
it slowly builds up tension over time because you're pulling out pieces. So I was trying to emulate a similar tension building,
Ah.
tension release, tension building aspect. And that wasn't specific to the cards. The cards definitely came from just a like eureka moment where I went, what if I took two of the same number and put it over a smaller number? Wow. Like it was
Hilarious.
not yeah, it wasn't it was just like out of nowhere. This is a cool mechanic. I think playing cards on top of other cards is interesting. And you see a lot of indie RPGs that use playing cards, just assign narrative value to a suit
Yeah.
and move forward. I also, in addition to the narrative value of the suit, and the number gets bigger, it makes it scarier. I also say that jacks, if they're introduced, are trouble from an outsider,
Mhm.
somebody that isn't in the crew is bringing your trouble. Queens are trouble from the inside, something or someone that's already there. Maybe your backstory comes up and gets introduced to the situation. And kings are it. The monster shows
Ooh.
up if a king is the trouble. And then I also introduced jokers, which is the absolute worst possible thing that could happen. Every time a Joker hits, it's a bad time. It's sort of just a in the deck is this time bomb that if it shows up, just is a catastrophe, causes all sorts of more problems. Um, so other than that, I mean the cards, I don't know if I really had a mechanical inspiration other than the we play a my group has played a lot of Dread. Dread is our go-to horror horror game, and my friend Matthew is very good at Jenga.
Oh,
So we never the tower just doesn't fall. So we've played a 4-hour session where the Jenga tower of Dread doesn't collapse.
what? No.
Right. So and like the GM just making us pull blocks over and over
Over and
and
over
we're
and over.
just going. Like humble brag, we're almost too good at Jenga to play Dread. So, uh, so which is a problem because like Dread, it is a big high tension moment to pull a block. Like it
Yeah,
does that really well. I love that about that game, but um, the release is huge and the tension is huge.
yeah,
It doesn't do a smaller ebb and flow the way I like.
yeah.
And I also 10 candles is a big inspiration, a big play to lose inspiration. And the tension from that, our experience, my experience with 10 candles was, oh no, a candle went out. All right, that's stressful. And then they were going out because they were running out of wax, and then immediately the next candle goes out, and then immediately the next candle, and then like the tension just like it was really narratively it was really cool because it like spiked out
Yeah.
of nowhere. It became a catastrophe. But the pacing on Dread and Ten Candles is almost out of your control.
Mhm.
I like I really like loosey goosey vibe heavy indie RPGs.
Yeah.
Big fan. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't into that. But I also like a little bit of mechanics that I can like engage with
Mhm.
and grasp onto. Like I want to be able to like make a mechanical game decision. And with the last hand, you are engaging with numbers and you have the cards and you're making a decision about you're engaging with the mechanics just a little bit, a little just enough to bite your teeth into. enough rules that you like engage that kind of rules part of your brain while
Yeah.
telling the story, because you're like looking for cards and you need to work together to get the right cards. Got these cats climbing all over me.
Don't worry.
Um,
I'll show you. I'll show you one of my cats afterwards. They
all
actually
right.
look very similar.
Um, oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what was I saying? Yeah, so that tension building is the mechanic that I think I was most inspired by. With I the way that like trouble comes down in a flop.
Yeah.
You have three cards, and sometimes those cards are kings or queens or aces, and you just don't have the cards in your hands. No players have the cards in their hands to deal with that, and everybody can look around and go, "We can't deal with that problem right now." Next scene. You play through the scene, characters make decisions, you go places, you role play, but you can't mechanically stop the problem. Um it's not the like skill test like Dread is,
Yeah.
or the weighted out don't breathe too heavy like 10 candles. The mechanics of the cards actually build up a problem you can't resolve, and you need to deal that narratively. The trouble that that card represents is following you into the next scene and the next scene and the next scene,
Yeah.
and that is a story building element that is ever present,
Hmm.
omnipresent. Not gonna settle on either of those words. um and and the mechanics and the cards, you once you draw enough cards, because every turn you're dealt two more cards.
Yeah.
Once you draw enough cards, eventually you'll get the cards to deal with all of this trouble. All these cards that are down on the community, from the flop,
Hmm.
from the turn and the river, more Texas Hold'em
Yeah.
stuff. As more cards get added to the community cards, and the more cards you draw, you'll eventually have a turn. Every game I've played, you have a turn or two where, okay, I have a card to deal with this now. I beat the crap out of that thing that's been chasing us. I have the lock pick to finally open up that box or whatever. Like, narratively, you can now accomplish all of the tasks that have been following you this whole time, because mechanically you just haven't been able to deal with it. And that is the release of pressure, and then it builds up again, and then there's
Yeah.
more cards you can't deal with, and you cycle through the deck, and that's the, I guess, the problem I was trying to solve, or I
No.
guess the thing I was trying to emulate.
No. That. To be honest, like when I've seen Dread, 10 Candles and all that, I kind of I haven't gotten a chance to play them, but from reading it, I kind of what you're saying kind of almost solidifies what I was sort of thinking about that. And one thing I'm not too sure. I'm going to ask you a question first, and then I'll be able to get my answer. But have you ever had a situation where one of the players all of a sudden regrets using X card turns before when it would have been perfect for this one?
Oh yeah, all the time, and that's great. That's a iconic horror movie moment,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Is you go, oh no, I don't have anything to deal with this right now. I shot the one bullet I had left in my gun to deal with that zombie back there, and now this crisis is way worse.
And I thought that's what it was, and I am so glad you said that because not only do the cards now build like their own narrative as you're going and keep it mechanical, but it also creates regret in people. And I
Regret.
don't
Yeah,
yeah,
I
go ahead.
oh, I hadn't thought about that before. I think you're right. I think that's another thing to add to my list of things to say during interviews that I have up on my screen here. But regret is a thing that it adds that moment of regret where you go, "Oh, I used that card already. I don't have a way to deal with this." One of the things you can do, if there's cards like, it's borderline, like the likelihood you could deal with an ace.
Yeah.
If an ace ends up in the trouble, the only way you can deal with that is a joker, which is a bad time. Everybody has to add cards from their hand to be new trouble. You don't want to play a joker unless you have to, or you fold. You can discard all of your cards from your hand, and your character becomes like indefinitely, permanently scarred, maimed or traumatized,
Mhm.
mental or physical. They suffer harm from that.
Yeah.
Um, and they carry that with them the rest of the story. You can't die in the last hand. Your characters can't die in the last hand until the final scene, till the
Yeah.
last hand.
Oh, of course.
Uh, of course, but you can become permanently injured. The scene in the movie where some like the guy gets bit by the zombie.
Yeah.
You have dealt with the problem. You have cleared the zombie horde, but you come back with a bite or whatever. So you can fold to clear an ace, and that's a bad time. But yeah, you're right. It has that moment of regret where sometimes you need the right thing.
Yeah. No, that that sounds really fun. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna definitely try this game out with my group. Uh,
Yeah, you should.
yeah.
It is. Let me know how it goes.
I
And
definitely will.
yeah.
I'll definitely keep you on the track with that. Just because, like, as I've stated before, I love horror and I love um, seeing what my players will do to try and get out of a situation. I
Yeah.
have a story for you that I'll tell you a little later.
Okay,
That's
good.
a horror
Good.
game. I think you'll really like it. Um, so it sounds like like the system itself sounds really cool, but is there anything specifically within this game that you are just like really proud of and want to highlight even more?
Oh, I really do. I'm so glad you asked that, Santa. I uh so the biggest thing horror one of the biggest things in horror that you can emulate in tabletop RPGs, cuz people this has been talked about a lot. There's no reason to reiterate it. You can't really do jump scares in tabletop RPGs. It's lazy and weird to be at a table with your friends and go, "Ha!"
Yeah.
Um you can't really do jump scares. You can kind of do body horror by talking at them, but you can't do that like visceral imagery that
Mhm.
is on a screen. What you can do really well is you can do the horror of the unknown, which is what the whole game's built around.
Yeah.
Um, and I was really inspired by Ten Candles. Again, I will go into how good these games I was inspired by are. But Ten Candles has a mechanic where at the end of every scene, or at the beginning of every scene, every player adds a truth to the story.
Yeah.
Um, and that adding of truths, in my experience with Ten Candles, was the most compelling part of that game because every player putting a little bit of themselves into the story is very engaging for players. One, two is it's like a way to add things that you weren't expecting,
Yep.
which adds to the uncertainty of every moment of the story. And my example from Ten Candles is my character I was playing was a single mother. 10 Candles. It's the apocalypse. The lights go out. There's no sun anymore, and there's monsters outside. Right. And my whole thing is I had a little baby with me, and the baby
Mm.
was crying and getting attention and getting the monsters. And my character that was my character's drive was to protect her child. And one scene, my friend made the truth, there is no more crying. And I hold on to that moment of tabletop RPG
Oh.
as like peak storytelling. And so, in the last hand, I tell the story because in the last hand, I utilize the truth mechanic in a every scene the dealer adds a detail to it, to
Yeah.
the monster. Um So at the beginning, all we know is that it is out there. Whatever it is, it exists.
Yeah.
It is there. It is bad. It is hunting you. And then each scene, you add a detail to it. I have a table in the back of the book, like I have a physical copy of the book. In the back of
Ooh.
the book, uh, that you can't see well at all, but
If you
looks.
pull it out quickly, like sorry, slowly, so put it closer to the camera, and then just go back slightly and stop right
Ooh,
there. See, oh, it was
okay.
perfect for a sec. Oh,
Okay.
it's there.
All right. Well, it looks really good. The book this is a test print of an old edition, but the book looks really great. It looks great. It very
What I'll
pretty.
do is if people look over to the right of their screen right now, there will be a picture with what you could see right on that
Oh,
page.
there you go. Yeah, so on the back of the book, the back cover, I have a table of a couple of things. I have some a table of example details you can add to the monster. Do you have D6 handy?
A
I
D6?
don't.
I do actually.
Two. Okay, roll me one D6.
Once, 4.
Roll me another D6.
Another 4.
Okay, so the detail that you would have added if you rolled off the table, you can always make up your own. I encourage making up your own, but all of the settings in our setting expansion with a bunch of settings in it are going to have their own D66 table, and the book itself has a D66 table, so you can always roll. What you rolled was it rots from within.
Ooh,
Ooh,
that's
we
cool.
don't know what that is. So one of my favorite things about the like adding details is like it is deafening. That doesn't tell us a lot about it. But if you combine it rots from within, it is deafening, it reeks of smoke, it has many legs. You start over the course of several scenes
Yeah.
getting this image in your head of what it is. And maybe over the course of several scenes, you start incorporating those things about it into the story.
And I really love that actually because it creates this mystery that nobody really knows where it's going to come from. And like in horror movies, you're not unlike within a game where you have to be a little bit more descriptive, usually if it's like a gym. This one, you're discovering things as it goes and you can add details and what it can do. And that just sounds really freaking cool.
And it democratizes the creative load, so
Hmm.
you don't have one person, one GM, one player who has to show up at the table and they have written their story, come up with their mystery and their monster, and really hope that you don't ruin that.
Yeah.
Because one of the hard parts about mysteries and horror games is that it's really easy to just like players to throw it all out the window.
Oh, yeah.
Um, the one of the things I'm proudest of in the last hand, one of the things that makes me constantly say that this is a good game and not just my game. I do think this is a good game, and what I'm really proud of is that it tells a very compelling and very like evocative and engaging horror story every
Mhm.
single time. I have not played. Maybe it's the players I play with. Maybe my friends are great, but I bet I do have one of the contributors on the expansion is playtesting it with a different group this weekend. We're getting more playtests in, but my bet is that this game tells a compelling and evocative story every single time without prep, which
And
is great
and
because I don't
it
want to prep a game.
yeah, no, and it honestly does sound like from everything you're saying, from what I've looked at, it really does sound like that. And I've seen a few GMless games where after reading, I was like, oh, I'm not too sure. Like, you really need to have the right people. But yours, like, and it's crazy because you didn't write it to be 200 pages long, but you can easily figure out how to do it in a short period of time and still have enough guidance to be able to create a story even with people who've never done it before. I think that's a really good thing to do. Like, congrats. Like, that's not easy to do. Kudos to you, sir.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
That my heart is very warm right now. Thank you. Feels great.
Nice. Um, so you said your Kickstarter's coming out. What is it? February 22nd, you said?
February, oh boy, 13th?
Oh, okay. I'm way off.
February 13th? What did I say?
I
Let's
think
check.
I think earlier
February
on you might have.
13th.
Yeah, okay.
The press kit says February 13th.
Nice.
That's the plan because my boss is out of town for the first couple of weeks of February, and I didn't need that extra stress while my boss is not in town and
Nice.
I have to do so much work at work. So
And
it's
if
the
I
February 13th through the 20 something,
And see, if
26th,
I
I
read
think.
my notes, I would have also seen that.
Yeah, yeah, it's my zine quest. It's my first zine quest. It's my first Kickstarter. It's my first crowdfunding anything. Everything, the base game is done, and by the time the Kickstarter launches, everything will be done. The
Oh, nice.
creative and design and everything should be written, layout, done. Everything will be done by the time the Kickstarter is live.
Oh, nice.
Um, I have I have my contributors have additional settings that I'm getting as we speak. My editor is reviewing those things, and I am putting them into layout. We're getting great public domain art that I am making a little bit spookier. I'm not an artist, but I'm really delving into it for this. We're doing good things. It will all be done.
Well,
So
some
by the time the Kickstarter goes, I will have a finished game
yeah,
that all we have to do is send files to printers. And I'm giving myself a very healthy amount of time to make sure everything goes smoothly because
yeah.
I've never done it before. But I've run a lot of LARPs and I've run a lot of projects, so I'm confident that my deal with problems as they arise ability will come into play, and we'll get it all taken care of.
No, that sounds amazing. What kind of backer tiers do you have for your project? Or
Well, you can get it just the PDF.
mhm.
It's gonna be $8. Just get the PDF. $12, you get the book, and we'll mail it to you. It's gonna be the printed zine like this, but probably matte instead of gloss, and without all of the typos. Um, and then there's gonna be apparently people like the option to buy two, so there's gonna be a $19 level that you get two.
Ooh, nice.
And then there is the $24 option, which lets you get the book and the PDF of the expanded settings. So
Oh,
expanded settings I've
nice.
got right now. I wrote the Steel Aurora, which is like a spaceship. It's kind of drawing on Alien, 2001: A Space Odyssey, kind of that we're locked in space and whatever it is we're stuck in here with it. That's the energy of the setting. Um, I have a Victorian mansion being contributed by a friend. I have my sister, who is a map maker and writer.
Mm,
She is writing me. She's writing a like Crusades through Crusade era.
yeah. Ooh,
So yeah,
yeah.
there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of cool ideas. I'm not sure all what is going to be done and ready by the time that this goes. The past month or so has been uh, a lot for a lot of my friends and a lot of my contributors. So
Yeah.
we're gonna see what all settles in by the time, but there's gonna be at least at least five settings in that, and the main stretch goal is right now. If we get $500, we're printing the game and everybody gets what they paid for. If we get $750, I'm printing the setting book too. So if we make a little bit more money, then we get to have printed copies of the setting books, and that's going to be exciting because there's going to be a lot of pretty art from the public domain and
Yeah. Hey,
a lot of cool ideas that aren't mine. Yeah. So I'm really proud of it, and we're going to have a lot of cool stuff, and it's it's going to be exciting. There's only one thing we haven't talked about yet, which is the last hand.
yes, that's right. You the very last hand. Okay, so once all you find out more about the monster, you've gone burned through some of your cards. What is the last hand? The time where I'm assuming this is where people can start dying.
Right. So the last hand is the final scene of the game,
Hmm.
um, where there is presumably some there are some community cards still left out in the public that are unresolved trouble. If you have resolved every single card that has come up, if you've just dealt with everything,
Hmm.
then everybody's great. Everybody has a great time. Everybody goes home and lives happily ever after despite the situation. But most of the time, you're going to have a card or two still left there because you can't deal with everything. And during the last hand, a everybody, instead of having a dealer who leads a scene, each person leads their own scene, and that scene is an epilogue for their character.
Oh.
And if there is any unresolved trouble at the end, and for every card left at the end, a character has to die. If one of
Ooh.
those cards is a joker, that character is becomes a follower of it, joins it. However
Oh.
that looks for your story. Um, if it is like a cult that worships it, then that might be the look. If it is like if it is like infecting things as hosts and more like a biological horror,
Yeah.
that might be it. But yeah, for a Joker, you become its follower, and for every unresolved trouble, a character dies in their epilogue. And the way you determine who dies in their epilogue is the sort of PvP aspect of the game. The reason that you are always looking over your shoulder through the whole story
Mhm.
uh, is whoever has the best poker hand at the end of the game survives, and you work down to the bottom. So say you have 5 players and there's 2 cards left, the top 3 poker hands survive and the bottom 2 poker hands, they are
Oh.
they have those characters have to die in their epilogue. Um, and that includes the cards in your hand, whatever you've saved through the game, whatever you've not used. So if you were sitting there going, "I'm really smart, I'm going to hold on to these double twos that I've got. I don't need to use those." You've got a 2 pair. That's great, but it also includes the remaining community cards, the unresolved trouble, the cards that have not been dealt with
Yeah.
contribute the same way the community cards would in a game of poker. So if you, the game I will call back on is I had a 4, 5, 6 of hearts in my hand, and the unresolved trouble was 7, 8, 9 or something. Like I had this huge run of a what is it, a straight
Yeah.
straight flush because they were the same suit. And so I was like building towards this moment through the whole game, and I went, all right, I don't need to use these cards, and we're gonna get there. And so you can just sort of build a poker hand through the game,
Mhm.
and in the final scene that means you don't die. And if you carefully make it so that there are, say, 4 unresolved trouble and 5 players, that means you're the sole survivor. So
Oh.
there is that sort of warranted distrust between players where you need to work together so that there aren't 5 unresolved trouble cards and everyone dies. But you only need to get you out of there.
That honestly, that I love that. I absolutely love that. And the reason why is because even in horror movies, there's always that distrust between people, as it's like, oh, they run off on their own because they don't help that person. And you've somehow, through the power and magic of playing with a deck of cards, has somehow been able to turn that into a literal mechanic that people will feel and sense throughout the whole entire game. Especially if they know,
Yeah.
if they've played it before, they know it's coming, so they'll automatically start trusting people less. That is, if I'm just going to say this, I think it sounds absolutely beautiful, beautiful. It's great.
Thank you so much. That
No
that
problem.
feels great. I appreciate that a lot. I am very proud of it, and I do think it's really good. Through play, you're right though. Once you've played it a few times, it starts getting a bit cutthroat if that's the energy of your group of friends. Because you're anticipating that, and you're
Yeah.
going, all right, I need to be the one who gets out alive. We had one person who specifically held on to a Joker until the last scene to use it right before the last hand, so that there was a Joker in the last, and that they wouldn't be dealing with it. Like
Oh.
the mechanics. I'm very proud of the fact that the mechanics facilitate a PvP element, a
Mhm.
semi-competitive, because it's more about telling a compelling story. It's always
Yeah.
going to be, it's a storytelling game. It's about telling a compelling horror story. But my group of friends, the table that I've been playing RPGs with for the past 7 years, always ends up with one or two players, even in our long, like 6, 7 month, year long campaigns.
Yeah.
We'll always have one or two characters that kind of go off the deep end and become mildly antagonistic, if not, okay, we have to execute you and you need to roll up a new character because there's no reason for our characters to continue working. We always have that
Yeah.
because our group of friends, we're comfortable having that antagonistic
Oh, yeah.
energy. We're comfortable with that. Some people aren't, and that's okay. And
Yeah.
everybody who isn't, this game, you can just work together. You absolutely can just cooperate and try really hard to deal with everything that comes at you. That is allowed. But if you want to make sure that you're not dead, and if you kind of like it, I wrote this after watching Bird Box, where it's a group of people holed up in a building and nobody trusts each other.
Mhm.
The Walking Dead is a great example of a show that I watched one season of, but I bet has a lot of characters that are like not necessarily friends, but need to work together because they're
Yeah.
zombies, and maybe backstab each other. And this game mechanically reinforces that through the way the cards are dealt.
Yeah. Yeah, what is it? When you're talking about like what the Joker does, I immediately one part of my mind went to a single movie. I'm trying to remember the name of it. What was that one? It had Katie Holmes in it in a big house with all those little tooth fairy things that eat bones. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Oh,
And you
oh,
know how
I
she ends up
envision it.
dying at the end after it seems like everything is done, and then all of a sudden they start pulling
Don't
her
be
towards.
afraid of the dark.
Yes, and then she gets her legs bent backwards, and gets pulled into the furnace. And I was just thinking, I was like, and then you hear her voice at the end of it. I was like, that is totally what would happen. That is,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have a feeling
We
my audience is sick of me saying this, but because I do it so often, but it honestly sounds so awesome and amazing. I feel like I could play around with this so much and have a lot of fun and be a player, not just a GM. So,
Right, everybody GMs a little bit. And
yeah.
like you can write your own setting document for this very easily.
Mhm.
Um so you can create your own little packet of tables and a little bit of write up and then put it on itch and go, "Hey, I made this setting document to tell a specific story. You can play it with the last hand. It's right here." It's like the template I was using for my contributors is like 1,400 words or something. It's not a lot, and it's mostly tables. And you can just write up your table of things about it, and you can tell you can basically create a little packet for your own story. It's very hackable. It can tell almost any type of story if all the players show up and go, "Hey, this is the energy we want to bring to this table."
That yeah, I'm definitely going to try this with my table. I'm not.
You
This is
should.
not me just trying to sugarcoat and be like, oh, for you. I literally, I am going to run this game for. Well, I'm
All
going to
right, I'll
play
be sure
this
to send
game.
you the most recent PDF as I get updates. There's no big mechanical changes, but there are grammar changes.
Ooh,
There are spell check has been done 2 or 3 times.
Grammarly, it's your best friend, man.
It's Grammarly. Grammarly doesn't work in Affinity Publisher. I
Oh,
today I transcribed it into a text only document, and my plain text document uh, caught some stuff because
oh,
Grammarly works in Google Docs.
oh, I didn't know that. Interesting. Yeah, no, honestly, I am actually very excited for this project. One final little question. If anyone wants to check out even more stuff, just learn a little bit more about the game, where can they go to find any additional information?
Yeah, so you can catch The Last Hand on Kickstarter. The pre-launch page is up. You can follow it on Kickstarter. Hit the notify me on launch button there. Just look The Last Hand on Kickstarter, or you can go to airborneham.games, which is my publishing company that I own. My website has links to the Kickstarter there. You can also go to my itch page, airborneham.itch.io. There is a Last Hand page there that has more like teaser images, a little bit of write ups about some of the details there, some of the stuff uh, that you saw in the press kit that I sent you.
Mhm.
A lot of that's just on that itch page so that anybody can see it because it's just good information. So otherwise, you can follow me on Twitter, which I'm not on often, but I'm at Airborne Ham on Twitter. I'm at Airborne Ham on Tumblr, which is where I'm writing up like long form blog posts about this because
Mhm.
I like being able to be wordy and verbose, um, and put more pictures in. So, Airborne Ham is the business and the name, and where you can find me online. And you can always track me down, and you can send me a message and we can talk about it.
Well, sounds good. Well, thank you very much, Eric, for joining me. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and you've made a backer out of me.
All right, fantastic. Well, thanks for having me so much. This has been great.
All right, people. And yeah, I hope everyone has a good time, and we'll see you all next week. Bye bye.
Bye.
Oh yeah, I can wave now. I forget. I keep on
You
forgetting
can
I'm on
wave.
camera.
It's a video.
Another thing I was looking at is like the whole time I was like, my God, my eyes do not open.